all right? And that's what was said, and I disagree. I think that it has market value, and it should be considered market value, whatever it may be. If land prices are going for $125,000 an acre, and what is it, a 3/4 of an acre or something like that, or
I'm not sure.
whatever the land value of it is, I mean, then we go ahead and that's what we have to base it on. So, just my opinion.
Dave, the town has been spending money maintaining this, correct?
Correct. Anything, like I said, that pertains directly to the water as far as the operator services, if parts are needed, that comes out of their funds. However, like we snowplowed the access road in there this weekend. So did it come out of one of my line items? Yes and no. It's time, it's wear on equipment, it's gas. So there is maintenance, kind of hidden maintenance costs for us to do it. I actually had DEP was when they were down there in the fall looking at what Cranberry Village was doing to their water infrastructure. The head of the drinking water program popped over to the well and had a look around the well, and there was trees growing up around the well house, so he wanted everything within 10 feet of the well house removed. I had it done. I had one of my groundskeepers do it. So their salaries is figured in. However, it's just an extra burden, if you will call it, on the town that, if we didn't own it. The only other thing is down the road, we just tested there for PFAS. That's the big thing in drinking water now.
Right.
And as more and more comes down the road, and eventually it's a mechanical part. It's a well that's, when things break, what happens if they don't have enough funding in their enterprise system? Where is that going to come from? Those are just questions that need to be, answered. I think it's just one less thing we didn't have to worry about. I think the town's in a better position.
Yeah, so while there may not be a tangible benefit to the town to giving it back, there is an indirect benefit. I mean, we are saving taxpayer dollars by giving this back.
Correct. In my opinion, yes.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Belvin?
One last thing is that through those emails that I obtained and I saw, they were given a 1-month reprieve on one of the, I think it was August of last year. They didn't have to pay a month's water bill, which was about $30,000.
Correct. And I'd have to go back through the paperwork. I do not remember the purpose for that, but I do remember, yes, that did happen.
I think
If I remember, it was to bring them to the negotiating table because they were refusing to pay it all.
That is
And
correct.
it was part of the negotiation. Okay, you know what? There's been a misunderstanding. 1-month reprieve. Let's move forward.
Yes, because they were, if I believe, now, sorry, you're correct, I believe they were 3 months in arrear.
They were.
Mr. Belvin?
So those 3 months in the rear was actually kind of longer than that, 3 months. I think it was closer to like 5 months that they were in arrears. And they stopped paying because they got a new billing company that came in, and the town was just giving them a bill to say, here, pay this amount. And there were no meter readings to say that the meters, we can't guarantee that this is the amount of money that is owed because there was no meter readers, correct?
Right. They had been paying their bills. The town, and then my department took over their invoicing, and it had been the same. Nothing was changed on our part. However, they did change their management company that oversees, I guess, a lot of their operations, and they got it and said, you should not pay this bill because there's no backup documentation, because we had never provided it. It had been long before I came, my department took over. So once that was straightened out, now we provide them with gallons usage, and that's when they also found out that they were using, well, why is this water usage so high? And that started the investigation into, they had a lot of leaks on their side after the well.
Right, well, they knew they had a lot more wells years ago, because that was always an issue, because I remember years and years ago that this was an issue too. But one of the issues that I have is that us 5 members right here, we're the water commissioners. When did anybody come to the Board of Selectmen, which are the water commissioners sitting right here for that, anybody come to us and say, guess what? They're in the rears. All right, if they're in the rears, we have things that we can do to force them to pay. All right, instead of going into a negotiations and dropping 1 month's of water bills. What we do is we say, fine, you don't want to pay? We're going to add it to your taxes. You don't pay your taxes, we're going to put a lien on your property. Okay, that's what we do. That's what our rights as water commissioners are.
If I may interrupt, Mr. Chair, I believe that Mr. LaFawn did tell us about this, and he chose a non-combative way of dealing with the problem, rather than attaching their wages or their rent or whatever.
Well, the problem is that we're water commissioners here. We are. We make those determinations, not somebody else.
Okay, but we're.
So dealing with this is as we've waived 1 month's water bill, we pay money from our taxes, all right, to help maintain this thing. It has monetary value. I don't think giving it away for $1. I think negotiations should be done separately and distinct to make sure that this is fair, not only for them, but for us, the residents, because that's what, who we represent the residents, and that which we should do. We do.
Okay, can we move on, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I think so. Does anyone else have anything to say about this particular article? And I guess the only thing I would ask, this water only serves Cranberry Village,
That is
correct?
correct.
Nothing else?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
One quick one. Do we know how large of a parcel of land this is? Is it under an acre?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I believe so. I can get that exact, Jim. I
It's
don't
not
have it.
buildable, because as
Right.
Right.
Mr. Siedentop said, there's a wellhead radius, that
Right.
you can't build
I
anything.
just wonder
in.
how big the
Yeah,
parcel
I
in
think
question
it's pretty
was.
small.
Okay.
I'll find that out and I'll get back to you.
I mean, it would seem to me that it makes sense to get this back to Cranberry Village and put them in charge of their own water, and have the town not be in charge of it, but. Is there anything else from any members of the board? Mr. Siedentop, do you have anything else on this?
No, I do not.
Is there a motion to put Article 24 on the warrant?
To recommend Article 24? I'll move to recommend Article 24.
Well, I get, first, Elaine, have we voted to put Article 24? It's not on the warrant yet, right? So we need two separate motions. We need a motion to put it on the warrant,
Okay.
and then we need a motion to recommend.
All right, I move that we put Article 24, the transfer of ownership of the Cranberry Village well, on the warrant.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to strenuously say, I think that we as the water commissioners should negotiate this with Cranberry Village before it goes to town meeting. We have not done that as the water commissioners, and therefore, I don't think we should put this on the warrant for this year and go through a negotiation process with us, the water commissioners.
We have a motion and a second.
Can I
Ms. Bogart?
Yeah, Bob, I think you raised some amazingly important points, and I think maybe some missteps were taken along the way. And I wish it had been dealt with differently. But I think the greater good is to kind of end this, not the word debacle now, and move forward. So let's not have to deal with it again. I think things should have been done differently, it seems. But I just think, what if they don't want to negotiate and then things happen and, Dave and his staff still have to maintain it. So I think things should have been done differently, but I think this is probably better to just do. But
Mr. Hopper?
Just one quick, that I agree with what Jen just said. You pointed out a lot of good points that I think if this was months ago, could have been different, but my personal feeling is let's bring it to town meeting and let town meeting decide. Because there is pros and cons to it. And it is time to move on for it, one way or the other, in my feeling. But
Okay. Anything else? All right. Motion and a second. All in favor of placing Article 24 on the warrant?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. Is there a motion to recommend Article 24?
I move that we recommend Article 24 for the 2022 annual town meeting warrant.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of recommending Article 24? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right. 4-1? Is that the vote?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Siedentopf.
Thank you.
That's the only article you're here tonight to discuss, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kathy Kay here to discuss Article 17 and Article 25. Article 17 is the acceptance of Massachusetts general law for unclaimed property.
Hello.
How you doing?
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So, whenever we issue payments to vendors for anything, the checks are valid for a year from the date of issue. After that time, they become stale dated. I reach out to try and contact the person and say, hey, you have this outstanding property, basically, that's due you. And the state has set forth a whole process by which the town, if they accept this article, can advertise and put the notice out that there are unclaimed funds available. And I checked with the clerk, the town clerk, and we could not find anything that the town of Carver had previously accepted, Chapter 200A, Section 9A, by which if we do accept it, then after going through a full procedure as set forth by the state in this article, then any unclaimed property funds from uncashed checks would revert to the town for use for general disposition, as opposed to if the town does not accept this chapter and section, the funds would be returned to the state.
Okay. Questions from the board?
If I may, and then you would hear those ads on TV, the state of Mass, or radio.
No, we don't have to advertise on TV. We just have to.
Not from you guys, but if it goes back to the state, because the state does
yes,
advertise
that's
unclaimed
true.
funds.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. But we would put a notice on our town website, and then for any funds over $100, we have to advertise in a county-wide newspaper, and that has to be out there for a year before the town can claim those funds.
Okay. Mr. Belvin?
So, how much prior to this, how much money has been left on the table by people? Do we have a figure?
Right now, I have a list that's got about $18,000.
18,000, and then we have to put that notice out on, say, Patriot Ledger or
That's what I
the
was thinking,
Enterprise
yep.
like that? We have to do that for a year?
I believe the notice is just issued once, but it has to be like it would be on a website. It says after a year, if nobody has come forward to claim
Oh, okay.
that.
I thought we had to advertise it for a whole year. I'm like,
no,
well, there
sorry.
goes that money, whatever it is.
Yeah, no.
And what we've been doing is
Nothing.
sending to the state?
We
This-
haven't been doing anything with
We
it.
haven't been doing anything with this money? It's just been sitting there?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else? All right. Kathy, do you have anything else on this?
No?
All right. Is there a motion to place Article 17 on the warrant?
I'll make a motion, we put it on the warrant.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to recommend Article 17?
I'll make a motion, we recommend it.
Second that as well.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. All right. Article 25, land transfers.
Yeah, so there are two parcels that are currently under the custodianship of the treasurer that are on Roberts Way. Parcel 62-2210 and then 62-2220. And we had an auction back in December at which these two parcels were offered up for sale, and after it had already been decided to put these up for auction, it was brought to my attention that the town might have a better use for these. So that's why I'm suggesting that the transfer custodianship to the select board.
All right. Discussion with the board? Ms. Hewens?
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that, Kathy, because I know we had discussed here the possibility of having that be an affordable site, affordable housing site, or home. I guess it would just be one home. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Belvin?
Yeah, so Roberts Way has been I found that property many years ago when I requested the information from the assessing department. sorry, of all the properties the town owns. And this was one of the properties that I brought to the redevelopment authority for us to look at for affordable housing, because I thought it was a great opportunity. I was giving different information about the properties, but lo and behold, like I said, I think this is a great use for affordable housing in the future, whether it goes to the redevelopment authority for them to work on a process with, whether it be a veterans agency or something else to do in that little area. It's a residential area, it's a perfect area for one, so I think this is a great opportunity for the town.
And I agree. I think affordable housing is something we've been discussing and we all acknowledge a need for quite some time, so I think it's some good steps. Anything else from the board? Hearing none. Is there a motion to put Article 25 on the warrant?
I'll move that we put Article 25 on the warrant.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to recommend Article 25?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank
We
you.
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for doing your due diligence on this research. I appreciate it.
All right. Next, we have the Board of Assessors here with us tonight to discuss Articles 18, 19, and 20. Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us this evening. If you could just introduce yourself for the folks at home.
I'm Ellen Blanchard, I'm chairman of the Board of Assessors.
I'm Joe Roach, I'm the town assessor.
Could I just ask that you guys really speak into the microphone for those people at home?
Alrighty.
All right.
Okay.
So, the first article you're here to discuss is Article 18, the senior surviving spouse or minor exemption.
Okay, so first I'd like to just say that these amounts have not been increased in 15 years. Needless to say, the cost of living and inflation have increased dramatically in that time, and we need to take care of our seniors and our veterans and all of those people who are special to us. So these three articles are to increase the amount of money that these people will receive off their taxes. Joe is going to step in and talk about what they are currently, what the amounts are, what they have to do, and what we're seeking to increase the amounts they receive.
Great.
It's all yours.
Okay. So the first exemption is Clause 17D. That's for surviving spouses, widows, children of a deceased parent. Presently, most of the applicants are senior citizens, so you have to be 65 as of July 1, and it's based on asset limitations. So for a single couple, you can't have more than, a single person, you can't have more than 40,000 in assets, excluding your home. For a married couple, you couldn't exceed 50,000 in assets. Presently, the exemption amount is $262.50 off of real estate and $7.87 off of CPA. The Board of Assessors proposed changing the exemption to $500. So $500 would come off the real estate bill and $15 would come off the CPA portion. The last couple of years, it's been right around 25, 30 applicants. So assuming we have the same number of people moving forward as applied this year, it would be an increase of $6,604.
And just for the benefit of the folks that are watching at home, I would just note that the Board of Assessors voted to recommend this article 3 to nothing.
Correct, at their December meeting.
Discussion from the board? Ms. Hewens?
I think this is terrific, and it is long overdue. You're right.
And I would echo that. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Is there a recommendation to put motion to put Article 18 on the warrant.
I move that we put Article 18, senior surviving spouse and minor exemption on the 2022 warrant.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, opposed? It is unanimous. Is there a motion to recommend Article 18?
I move that we recommend Article 18.
Is there a
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right, thank you. Article 19, the Senior Veterans Tax Work-Off Program.
Article 19 is similar. It's a senior and veteran tax work-off program. So that would be for people who are 60 years of age. They have to apply every year, and they work, in town departments for a maximum of $750 that comes off of their tax bill. As the minimum wage is increased, so first of all, they're paid at the state minimum wage. So as the minimum wage increases, the number of hours that they're able to work has decreased. For a person who works the full number of hours and gets the $750, after they pay taxes, because they pay income tax, they get a W-2, they're averaging about $665 off their tax bill. So it's going to maintain the benefit to the departments. We're not losing work-off hours, and it's going to maintain the benefit for the applicant. They're going to get an increased amount off their tax bill. Similar, not a ton of people do this program. Last couple of years, it's been 14 in 2020, 18 in 21, 11 in 22. So assuming there's 14 people and they all work the maximum, it'd be an increase of $3,500.
All right. Thank you. And as I did in the last one, I'll just note that the Board of Assessors voted to recommend this article 3-0. Discussion from the board?
I move that we put Article 18, senior surviving spouse, Article 19, senior/veteran tax work-off program on the warrant.
There is a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Motion to recommend?
I move that we recommend Article 19 on the 2022 annual town meeting warrant.
Second it.
We have motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. The next item is Article 20, the senior tax exemption.
So this is the senior tax exemption. It's Clause 41C. It's similar to 17D. They have to be 65 years of age as of July 1, and it's based off of income and assets. So a single person can make $24,758. A married couple can make $37,137, and then the asset amounts are the same: $40,000 for a single person, $50,000 for a married couple. The exemption amount currently is $750. That comes off of real estate. $2,250 comes off of the CPA tax. The Board of Assessors proposed changing this to $1,000 that comes off of real estate, and $30 that would come off of CPA. We grant more of these. We grant 33 roughly. So right now we're just $24,750 is coming off of real estate. If it was increased to $1,000, it would be increasing by $8,250. And just as a note, the deadline to apply for all of these is April 1st for anybody watching at home.
It's coming up, okay? And I would just add, as I have in the last two articles, that the Board of Assessors voted to approve or recommend this article 3-0. Discussion from the board? Mr. Belvin.
Does it matter on how much property they own or the house value of the property?
Their house value doesn't matter. Their domicile that they live in, assuming it's not like a huge multifamily or something like that.
They can apply, but it only
Ellen,
pertains,
speaking to
You
the
can speak into the
microphone.
microphone.
they can apply for a two-family or a three-family, but they can only, the value is either half or one-third, depending on how many units there are. So and we have so few in Carver, So, and of course, that may change with the MBTA, but so they are allowed to, but it's likely that with the rent that they receive from the other units, that would disqualify them as far as income goes.
I'm sorry. I meant if they had a house value of $500,000.
Oh,
If the value of the house, does that actually matter, or is it just
No.
the income?
It's just the income and the assets
Okay,
on this.
that's what I meant,
Right.
so.
No, the value does not, it's not in consideration at all.
Now, value might matter if they had, in a different community I worked in, you have people who would inherit a house in the Azores, and now, now they have a second home and that bumps them over their asset, or if they had lots of different lots, lots of land, and that pushed them over the 50,000. But it's just something we would review,
Anyone else?
Just a quick question. The difference between Article 18 and Article 20? The Article 18 is for surviving spouses?
Article 18 doesn't have any income limitation.
Oh, thanks.
So, lots of times you might see, it's a single person, the income's low, and now they're getting, their deceased spouse's pension or something like that, and it might bump them over the 41C income. So if they can't apply for the 41C or don't qualify, lots of times they may qualify for the 17D.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Is there a motion to place Article 20 on the warrant?
So moved.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Is there a motion to recommend Article 20?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, folks. We appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Building Inspector Paul Boucher here to discuss Article 27, the fence bylaw, with us. Thank you very much for
Good
joining us
evening.
this evening. What can you tell us about Article 27?
Article 27, I can't tell you much. All I can tell you is fence viewer is something that other towns have, but it's not in a zoning bylaw. It's usually in the town bylaw. The only thing with that there is that's something that I feel, in my opinion, is a civil matter. The town should probably stay away from it.
So you are you're not recommending?
I would
Article
not
27.
recommend it. No, I would not.
All right. All right. Discussion from the board?
What would you change within that? My feeling was this, is that it is a zoning issue, but actually from talking to somebody else, they also said it's more of a town bylaw, where other towns do have town bylaws on fences, of where they can be placed on the properties and whatnot. And if it's having a site plan done first, you turn around and you stop these issues before they even happen if you keep it away from that property line.
But the problem with that there is, Bob, it's a civil matter. So why would the town get involved in a civil matter? If you want to put your fence up in a certain location and your neighbor is disputing that, the town should not get involved.
Okay?
And it's not a zoning issue.
I understand, and you're right, it is. Like I said, I talked to other people and they said, or one other person, they agreed that it's not a zoning issue, so. But other towns do have fence bylaws, correct?
They might, I haven't really, they have fence view. A fence bylaw might be height of fence, location of fence. Like we have in our zoning bylaw, we have a corner bylaw that allows only a certain amount of thing, like a fence can only be so high or a sign can be so low, but it has to stay within that triangle where you need your line of sight.
Right. But that's under the sign bylaw.
No, that's in our site observation bylaw, obstruction.
Okay.
But I would not recommend getting involved in locating fences, and, because you're just opening up some problems.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I ask, what are the regulations on fences now? When you need a permit, when you don't?
The state requires a building permit for a fence 7 feet or above.
And so the process, if someone wants to build a fence that's 7 feet or above, what do they do right now?
They need to apply for a building permit.
So they come to your office, get a
and
permit.
Get a building permit. Yep.
Does it ever get inspected, or?
The reason why you want a building permit is required for a fence 7 feet or over is for the wind shear on the fence. So I would need a sketch or something to make sure the footings for the fence are in at a proper depth. And I'd probably go out and take a look at the holes to make sure the holes are at the proper depth. And then you can put the fence up, as long as they know where their property line is.
Okay, and are there any regulations on like which way the fence faces? Oh, because I was looking into it, and there actually are quite a few towns that have fence, I'm not sure, bylaws or ordinances, but it's actually kind of common to have regulations on fences, and they're not uniform. I saw a lot of 7, but when looking at towns, 6 feet was common where it triggered a permit, and they did vary for if you can put your fence up to the lot line, or it has to be a foot from the lot line. If the pretty part of the fence has to face your neighbors or you, it's not uncommon to have a fence bylaw or ordinance, so I don't think that Bob was unreasonable in bringing this to us. I'm not sure that I agree with all of the language. I have questions on it, but it's not something new he's making up.
Do you have a problem in town with fences?
Personally, no, but when he brought up the idea and I looked more into it, is this something that might benefit Carver? It seems like it might have a place here. So, have you had problems with
Not
fences?
since I've been here.
So,
Mr. Belvin.
as one of the fence viewers, or the only one right now, I've been called a couple of times about fences. And the worst case one was the neighbor had purchased the property, and they put up a fence on the other person's property. And it wasn't on the line, it was way into their property. Then the house got sold, and in the process of the sale, lo and behold, the neighbor went ahead and had a assessment done of it and found out, yeah, it is on their property. And now it becomes, as you say, it is a civil matter. If it's on the property line, then the fence viewer can deal with that. But if we had something in place beforehand, because all we have is recommendations, correct? We have a form the town has that has recommendations on fences. But not having anything in place right now, I think we need something. I'm willing to take this off the plate right now so we can discuss it more in the future. I have no problem withdrawing this for it, but I think we do need something in place to keep it off the property line so we don't have problems between neighbors. I actually saw a thing that a neighbor went ahead and put a fence up, and they put graffiti all over the other person's side of the fence, so they had to turn around and spend money to put another fence on their property going across just to get rid of that graffiti, and it was pretty bad. And that's how bad some issues with neighbors can be, where you end up having a fence a foot off the property line here, and then you have another one here where there's a no man's land in between, all right? But if we have something, then we kind of stop it before it gets to a point. That's my opinion. So I'm willing to withdraw this from this town meeting, so it can be looked at again.
Okay, so are you withdrawing this?
Yes,
Okay.
I will. 'Cause
Mr. Fennessy, we don't need a motion on that, do we?
Since it's.
Do you recommend a motion?
No, because it's still open.
Thank you very much. I appreciate.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr.
Have a good
Boucher.
night.
We appreciate
Thank you.
you joining us
Thank you
this
very
evening.
much.
Can I just, one more comment to Bob? I hope that you do bring it up, or that it comes up again, because in thinking about what he said, we have appointed fence viewer positions. So it kind of just makes sense to have something official that they can reference in dealing with resident disputes or questions. It just makes sense to have something that, okay, well, this is the ordinance, bylaw, whatever, that I am bound to. So I hope it does come back in some form, so.
So, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So would that be a bylaw, or would that be something through the building department? And what you've
The
seen,
way-
what Jen, what
The way it was,
anybody's
the way it
seen?
was told to me was that it should be more of a town bylaw, all right, where it would be under our town bylaws instead of a zoning bylaw. I put it as zoning bylaw, that way if there is an issue or whatnot, then they have another outlet to go to, i.e. the zoning board. That was my thought process for it, but I was wrong, and I mean, I agree that putting it to a town bylaw would probably be better.
Everyone set? All right. We're a little bit ahead of our agenda. We have a couple of things coming up that we can't take early. I don't want to take citizens' participation early, just in case someone comes in at 6 o'clock. So with the board's permission, I'll skip down to our 6:05 item, the COVID test kit update. Any objections to that? All right, so just so folks at home are aware, the town of Carver has received from Plymouth County a number of cases of COVID-19 test kits, and will be making the test kits available to residents from the town of Carver. Kits will be distributed in an area between the rear of Town Hall and the EMS building on Saturday, February 19th, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Only one kit, there's 2 tests per kits per household, and proof of residency is required. And just so folks are aware, Kevin Forg has or will be delivering kits to Meadowwoods, Cranberry Village, South Meadow Village, and Pine Tree Village, as well as Waterview Village and the Housing Authority property. So those residents won't have to come on Saturday and line up. Kits have already been distributed or will be distributed to their parks directly, so they can get them right from their parks.
Can you repeat the time on that?
Sure. It is, let me just get back to it.
I got the 19th.
It is February 19th, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And again, it's right out back here in the area between Town Hall and the EMS building.
And it was 1 kit per resident?
1 kit per household.
1 kit per
One
household?
kit per household. There's 2 tests in every kit.
Okay, so if I come at 9 and my husband goes at 11, how are we gonna know that my household already got one?
You would have to ask Mr. Forg. I'm just passing on the information.
Okay, do you?
You know, we just hope that somebody doesn't do that.
Okay,
It's too complicated to try and have multiple lists
sure.
Yeah.
of somebody coming by and, you know, just be honest.
We would be.
You, be honest.
I think you
We're
do
not
the-
even gonna be here.
I think you do the best you can.
Okay, and then if they're not all distributed on Saturday and with the deliveries, what happens to the extra?
I don't think,
Okay. If
I don't,
may.
has there been a discussion of that
Yeah,
yet?
there has, that we're planning on maybe having another day during the week, because some people may work weekends all the time, so we'll see how it goes on Saturday, and then if there's multiple boxes left, then we may hold another one on a Wednesday morning or afternoon or something.
Where do you want people to enter? I'm just thinking of like yard sales. Well, you've got the early, when we had the townwide yard sale and I drove around, I don't know how many people told me, there were early birds at my house at 7.
I'm sure there will
So-
be. I believe they're going to set cones up,
There's
correct?
cones and the signs.
So you'll
Signage.
enter here on Meadow.
I'm
Meadowbrook?
assuming it's gonna
Okay.
enter and come right around the town hall.
Okay, so
and
it'll be
then out.
clearly marked.
Yep.
Okay. I think there's gonna be a good turnout. I don't know.
I do
but-
too.
I
You
think
know,
they'll-
I think if this was a month ago, it'd be crazy
Right.
turnout. But I think things are settling down a little bit, so.
I think there will
Most
be-
people like myself bought these things for
Yeah.
$29.
Well, and that's why I'm so glad we distributed them, because they are $29 or $30 for, per kit, and it's a savings to people, so it's important we get it out. And I think they also did, the folks down there have done a great job in getting them out to the parks already. So those people
Yeah.
don't have to come, they don't have to line up, they can get them directly from their parks in whatever way those folks have chosen to distribute them.
Oh, they already got them. Now with
They
this,
already got them or will be getting them. I'm not sure every park has gotten them, but I think most have.
Is this on the town website, Facebook page, and was an email sent out?
It's on the town's website right now.
Can we
Yep.
get it on the Facebook page? Because then it can probably
Yeah.
be shared to the two big ones.
Yep, and an email has absolutely been sent out, because
Okay.
I got one.
Well, if we can get it on the Facebook page, that would help.
Yep.
So I think this is great.
Yeah, and I know it's on all the town, Carver Helping Carver, Everything Carver. It's on
Okay.
all those places,
great.
because I put them there. So,
Excellent.
when I saw the email, I shared it, so.
Excellent.
It's everywhere, so.
Great.
Does anybody have any questions about that? Mr. Bell?
I just want to make sure that it's clear that they come in through Meadowbrook, they come across closest to the town hall area, and then exit out. That way, we don't interfere with EMS being able to get their ambulances
Yeah.
out. That's my big concern, that they can get in and out of here as quick as possible
Yeah.
and not be affected by this.
Yeah, we'll have him involved too.
Yeah.
in setting this up, so.
Yeah, so.
And again, there's gonna be
Thank you.
signage
And,
and the
I
coding.
should say too, it's weather-related, if it's a snowstorm or something, or.
Absolutely. I
we'll
did
have to
discuss
have-
that with Mr. Forg, and the one thing he would add is, please watch the Town of Carver website. If there, for some reason, there is inclement weather and they need to change it, they'll post it on the website, so.
Is there a plan if it's a huge deal and traffic spills onto 58 to deal with it's not King Richard's Fair, but if we're, what is the traffic plan?
I'm sure we'll get the police chief involved and
Okay.
make sure that they have a plan on moving cars.
Okay,
Maybe through the library or something, I don't know.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
just trying to think ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, brainstorming here is if they came in this way over here, it may be a longer stretch for banking cars out, just an opinion. But
Yeah.
you guys, I'm confident the
We'll
police
do-
and
we'll do a
DPW
zigzag.
will, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like a Disney World.
Yeah,
line.
they'll do a good job, so I have confidence.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone all set with that? All right. Okay, Ms. Weston, do we know if anyone from the Plymouth Airport Commission is here?
He was.
I did see Ed
Ed
pop in.
was here.
Okay. Well,
So he's probably close by.
yeah, I'm hesitant to move on to our 6:45 item. It's a little early for citizens' participation, so,
How about a 5-minute break?
yeah, I think we'll take a 5-minute recess. Next item up on our agenda this evening is citizens' participation. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address the board? Mr. Mahar, step right up. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Pat Maher.
Mr. Mahar, please speak really close to the mic.
Okay,
There you go.
how's that?
Good.
That's good. Some of you I've known for a long time, some of you I don't, so good to see you all. It's been about 30 years that I've been involved in municipal government, municipal experience. 12 years as Carver School Business Manager, retiring in 2014 as Assistant Superintendent. Carver FinCom member, Carver RDA member, Carver Cable TV Board member, also on the Town Administrator Search Committee. Spent a few years in Marshfield Schools, several years in a regional Voc school, serving 9 cities and towns. Currently a part-time treasurer for 2 regional collaborative school systems. And be sure that I'm addressing you as a private citizen, and in no way, shape, or form am I representing any of these groups. Just wanted to let you know that I've been around the block a few times. I've never seen anything like what's been going on here over the past couple of years, and I'm not particularly meaning that in a very good way. I appreciate a couple of minutes to make a few statements and observations, and this is not meant at this time to be a dialogue with the board, but just maybe you'll all take something from it and begin a better dialogue of your own. I just want to start out by recognizing Rick LaFond. I've known and worked with Rick for over 25 years. He's one of the best and most effective town administrators in the area. It's very unfortunate that he will not be back with us as the permanent town administrator. Next, I want to address the members of the Select Board. I really have little confidence in this board as a whole, and zero confidence in what has evolved to be a three-member majority. There's minimal experience, minimal municipal knowledge, and it shows in the decisions and the comments. In fact, the board has often shown itself to be visibly dysfunctional. Decisions have been made damaging to the town and potentially damaging to a very fine individual, even involving a campaign of disinformation with anonymous sources, unnamed employees, unfounded, unproven, uninvestigated allegations that unfortunately have influenced decisions. Members may want to try to speaking to others who may be more experienced and knowledgeable, as you're really missing the big picture and the ramifications their decisions have. People need to be held accountable for their decisions, especially poor ones. It's obviously not happening here. And if board members cannot make coherent and effective decisions, then they should resign and make room for others that can. This board came within one vote of hiring a permanent town administrator on a 1-hour interview, only because it wasn't Rick. How inept is that? I could go on and on with other examples, but I won't at this time. I mean, talk about amateur hour. You just don't know what you don't know. There are many holes in town government here. In fact, sometimes it looks like Swiss cheese. Often I've seen minimal functionality at town hall, totally embarrassing and needs to be corrected. There was concern on whether or not a representative from the FinCom should be on the town administrative search committee. It's come up for a vote due to members on this board not liking or disagreeing with the choice. Well, this person was selected unanimously by the FinCom to represent us. We feel he is the best person to do so and should not be subject to the whims of this board. Fortunately, it was corrected. You're going down a very dangerous road when you question the decisions of autonomous boards. There's no place for that here. And then it happened again with the cable contract. It's negotiated in good faith with Comcast and the Cable Committee. Rejected by this board for reasons not even related to the contract itself. Again, fortunately corrected. Maybe you would like it if there were no boards or committees, or even go back to the time where there was no town administrator. I remember those times. Then you could just do everything yourselves and continue to drive this town into the ground. I mean, what does somebody think you are? Some kind of an authoritarian dictatorship? The message being sent to all boards and committees is this: if we don't agree with or like what you do, we will deny it. This is a horrible reality. This should never happen, as it is okay, even healthy, to have a variety of opinions, but there must be a coming together and moving forward to honor a vote when it was made with the best intentions. And remember, there should always be only one ultimate goal, and that is what's in the best interest of Carver and its residents. I would insist that this board and all boards reflect on this as votes are taken. And if you're interested in having community members serve on committees, then you have to work with them and not against them. And by the way, all I've said, factual without exaggeration. And to reiterate, if board members cannot make coherent and effective decisions, then they should resign and make room for others that can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar.
Mr. Mahar, could you leave a copy of that with Mrs. Weston?
Excuse me?
Could you leave a copy of that with Mrs. Weston, because it has to be included in the minutes?
Well, it doesn't have to be.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
All right, we are going to move along. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address the board? Seeing none. Next item on our agenda is a poll hearing on a poll being put in on Tremont Street, closest street to Crow's Neck Road. And I believe that's supposed to be corrected to Crow's Point Road?
No,
Crow's Nest.
Crow's Neck, okay. All right. Ma'am, step right. Thank you.
Hello again.
How's everybody?
Good. If you can just
Good,
identify
thank you.
yourself for the folks at home?
Karen Johnson on behalf of Eversource Energy.
Thank you.
And before I begin, along with the error for the closest street, we now have to include Verizon as a JO petitioner on this. So I don't believe we can move forward. I'm sorry, for the wasted time for the board, but
All right.
I just found this out. We have it as listed as Eversource poll. In a poll line, it should be JO Eversource, or joint owned with Verizon.
All right. Well,
So I say we,
if that's the case, just work with Ms. Weston to get on a future agenda,
okay,
and we'll reschedule.
I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All right, next up is an update from the Plymouth Airport Commissioners and our Carver representative, Mr. Ed James. Folks?
Hi, my name's Ed James, the Carver rep to the Plymouth Airport Commission. I'd like to introduce our commissioners. Ken Fosdick is our chairman. Doug Crociati here is with us. Tom Hurley on the keyboard, and Tom Marr is our airport manager here right now. So I'll just let them take over from here, and that would be great.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. James.
Sit down here. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for giving us a few minutes tonight to tell you about an update that we're about to take on. So, but before as Ed said, I'm Ken Fosdick. I'm the chairman of the commission. I would like to take just a minute to thank Ed, who comes to our meetings religiously. He is there all the time. He's a positive person. He has good comments, and we welcome his addition to our meetings. So I thank Ed, and I thank you guys for having him as your representative.
Thank you.
Okay, so the purpose for tonight is that we're announcing that we are going through a master plan update. A master plan is a process that the FAA, the State Aeronautics Commission, and the board go through on a 10-year cycle, 10 to 12-year cycle. It's to update the master plan. The master plan is a way that the FAA and the state and we can judge what we're going to do over the next 10 years. They require it to be updated every 10 to 12 years. But the process is really a 20-year process. So if you expect to receive funding from the FAA, you have to be on their program. They schedule things out over the years. And for example, we have a runway reef topping, not replacement, but retopping process. And that goes out some 10 or 12 years. And they expect each airport to go through this update to current conditions. The last time we did one was 12 years ago. At that time, we didn't have the new administrative building we have. We have different conditions there. So the first part of this process will be to update the plan to what conditions are currently on the ground. The second part of the plan is that then we go through and we look at changes in FAA regulations, signage, for example. There are certain ways that they present hold lines for runway entrances that is uniform throughout the country. And so they want every airport to be on that process. So we'll find out where we are short, where we aren't. We're pretty much up to date. And we'll go through that process. So the first thing we do is announce to the public that we're going to start this process. Then we go through the update, and then we come back and say, okay, what do we need to do? And we announce that. We review that with the FAA, we review it with the state, we review it with our commission, and then we make that announcement to the public. And then the public has an opportunity to comment on it, and then we take the comments, go back and finalize the plan, and then announce the finalization. So at this point, what I'd like to do is introduce Tom Marr, our manager, and he's just going to give you a little presentation from our engineering company that presents the process here. So if you don't mind, we'll take a minute and do that.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Tom Marr, and I'm the manager of the Plymouth Municipal Airport, and I have a very short PowerPoint presentation in reference to what this is all about. So if we go to the first slide. First off, I want to start off by indicating that the Plymouth Airport Commission as a whole has voted to keep the airport as a so-called B2 category airport. It's what it has been for the last 30 years. And from the get-go, they wanted to make sure that any update did not look at changing the category to something that was for larger aircraft. So the B2 category aircraft is for, designation is for a specific size, weight, approach speed type of aircraft. And it's basically the aircraft that have been based at the airport for the last 30 plus years in the way of small business aircraft and things of that nature. And we thought that that was very important to make that known up front. Okay, next slide. How does this process work? There's a collection of team members involved. First being the Plymouth Airport Commission, who by Chapter 90 of Mass General Law is responsible for the operations of the airport. Second is the Federal Aviation Administration and Mass DOT Aeronautics Commission. That's partly because from a funding standpoint, but the regulations and the laws that we have to follow as far as safety is concerned are both federal and state, primarily federal regulations and such. And then we have the stakeholders, and that's for all the people that live in and around the airport, the users of the airport, so the people that are based there, the people that work at the airport, and it's very important that we have the input from those people also. And our consultant is Du Bois & King. They've been the consultant for the Plymouth Airport for the past 30 years, and I believe that the commission has a strong connection with D&K in reference to believing that they can do a good job to study this. Next slide. The purpose of the master plan update is to basically ensure that we're meeting all the current regulations and standards that the FAA has set forward. It's important that it has public involvement. It will evaluate all the safety needs of the airport, including the runway length analysis. It will look at various economic opportunities, including, what is the airport going to look like 10 years from now? How can we get some buildings in the town of Carver on the Plymouth Airport, which is very important, and we're definitely going to need some help there. And we're also going to be looking at different means by which we can obtain sustainable infrastructure, be it solar or probably that's the most realistic thing. Wind is not generally allowed at an airport because they're tall structures. And try to determine the timeline that any of these types of changes might require, since most of them do require long lead times by design almost. Next slide. And the Airport Commission itself came up with these basic principles, and they wanted to make sure that this entire process was transparent, and that's part of the reason that we've been to the Plymouth Select Board, we're coming here, we're going to the West Plymouth Steering Committee, and we're trying to have people understand what this process is. And this is before the study has started. Okay, so this is like the preliminary, this is the basics, what we're doing, et cetera. But that type of involvement is certainly very, very important. We want to make sure that the airport is built to the appropriate standards and capacity that is realistic to the Plymouth Airport. The whole thing about if you build it, they will come, yeah, that isn't true. Meaning, we're in southeastern Massachusetts. It's not Hanscom Field in Bedford, Lexington. It's not Beverly Airport or Norwood Airport. It's a different demographics, and it probably always will be. We want to try to look at the future conditions that may be required to comply with FAA design requirements. Take advantage of various opportunities that can increase safety for both the people that use the airport, but also for the surrounding community. Meaning we want to make sure that we don't inadvertently create something where there could be a hazard created by the aviation activity. And we want to try to be environmentally responsible in reference to all that we do. Okay, next slide. The process it's fairly straightforward. The FAA requirements basically only require one public meeting. Now, we're planning on having something in the order of about 5 public meetings, including meetings like this. But we wanted to do as much as we can to make sure that everybody understands what's going on, et cetera. Okay, so the first public meeting is basically the overview, and that's kind of what we're doing here, just telling you a little bit about how the process works, et cetera. Then the consultants will start to look at the existing conditions and the forecast. Always tricky to try to figure out what aviation is going to do in the future, but they're going to try to do that. They submit the forecast to both the Commission, the FAA, and the Mass DOT for approval. It's actually the FAA that has the legal right to approve a forecast or not. And they typically accept what we determine as what is likely, et cetera. At that point, they would draft the needs and prepare a collection of alternatives. What will the alternatives look like? We don't know at this juncture because literally we're just starting this process. There would then be a second public hearing, public meeting that would go over some of the alternatives. There would be a comment period for anybody, be it users or neighbors and things of that nature. And then those comments would be incorporated into any of the alternatives and looking at what might be a preferred alternative. And that would be followed by a third meeting where the commission would basically make a determination on what the master plan is likely to look like. Next. And all of this will be public documents, et cetera. So we're in this very beginning, opening stage of the process in February of 2022. The alternative determination is likely to be available sometime during the latter part of March. It's a fairly simple overall view because there's not much in the airport that's likely to change. You know, it's not like we're going to stick a totally different runway in a different direction, or the taxiways are probably going to stay more or less where they are. That follows by a third public meeting after the comment period in May, and then the actual implementation is likely to take a number of years, mostly because of permitting, if there's any permits required, and funding. You know, the FAA, they put out money in small amounts, et cetera, and we're going to have to determine what the availability is, et cetera, going into the future. Last slide. And we'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have, and we certainly appreciate all the support that Carver has given the airport over the years.
All right. Thank you. Just a quick question from myself. When you reference these public meetings, where would they take place?
The plan would be, the first one was Zoom because of what was going on in the world. The hope was to have it in one of the hangars at the Plymouth airport that was large enough for a group of people. And, you know, including kind of COVID sensitive so that it wouldn't be a crammed situation, et cetera. But it's trying to figure out what's going to happen with COVID to some extent that determines how we go forward.
And how do you go about notifying people of the public meeting?
It would be noted in a collection of sites on our website, on the town's website, on Facebook, through a series of emails. So anyone who wishes to get on the email list can send me an email, and I will make sure that they would be notified of any public meetings. And of course, in the newspaper.
All right. Could you just include perhaps maybe Ms. Weston in the email list so we could, as a board, notify the public at one of our meetings when there's a meeting coming up? Thank you.
Certainly.
Questions from the board?
I just had I don't really have any questions, but I did want to thank you, Mr. Marr, for letting us know that it's going to stay a Category 2 with the small prop planes and a few small jets.
Yes.
That's much appreciated by me. And my grandsons love it too. And I remember quite a few years ago now, I don't know if it was the 10 years ago that you were talking about when the runway expansions were proposed, and there was kind of a little bit of a minor uproar, and I think it's worked out really well, as far as I can tell from Carver's perspective. So just thank you all very much for that.
And it's fascinating that the nature of lengthening the north-south runway to balance more or less with the east-west runway did a very nice job of mixing up the traffic. So now, instead of having every jet take off either west over Carver or east over West Plymouth, now we have a north-south runway, which when the wind's out of the north, that's the way the larger aircraft tend to take off. So we certainly thought it was a more fair way of spreading it. And there's a lot of logic to that, I think.
I agree. Anything else? Mr. Belden?
Yeah, thank you guys very much for coming in here. We appreciate it. More knowledge, the better. One of my things was that we see a lot of building being done there on the Plymouth side. And on the Carver side, not as much. And it's kind of frustrating when I drive down there and look at this and say, why not? Why? And when you go in the assessors and find, well, the land's owned by the Plymouth. So, I mean, what?
It's unfortunate.
How do we, as a board, or you guys, go ahead and say, guess what? Spread the wealth. We want some industrial buildings over there, and for us, because that's a perfect area for it.
And I think the major challenge historically...
Sir, if you could just speak into the microphone.
The major challenge is the split tax rate in Carver. The 4 hangars that are in Plymouth, they pay about 50% more in taxes in Carver than in Plymouth. And that has been, unfortunately, a deterrent that we've had prospects that come forward, and then they sit there and they do the research, and they sit there and say, yeah, it's expensive. And we were hoping at some point to be able to open a dialogue where possibly there could be some type of pilot program or the like that might balance it out a little bit. And that certainly would be handy. And if it's any consolation, we're running out of space in Plymouth for hangars.
It should be pointed out that the hangars are actually privately owned, so that's why each individual owner brings that calculation, the tax calculation, into perspective, and that's what drives it. So it's a difficult one. But to go back to the point, I'm glad that Tom brought it up, and shame on me that I didn't mention it, but every time you go through a strategic plan, is what we would currently call this process, everyone thinks that we're about to build Logan South. We're not changing the nature of the airport whatsoever. It's just to make sure we're up to date.
Thank you. Mr. Belden?
One other question is, are there any possibly opportunities to get flights to, like, Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, similar to what the Cape does? Is that in the horizon at all? Or
We've always looked for entities that might be interested in doing that, and it was about 7 years ago that Nantucket Shuttle, for one summer, operated scheduled flights out of Plymouth to the Vineyard and Nantucket. They got bought out by Island Air, and then Island Air went bankrupt, so it was a challenge. The only company that might ever have a chance of making a go of it would be somebody like Cape Air,
right?
Because they have enough mass to be able to operate something for a while in that regard. But Nantucket Shuttle was actually the 3rd attempt in the last 30 years, and it's a hard business to make any money at,
I've always felt there was a need for that, and but somehow the economics of it apparently just don't work, as Tom just pointed out. We've had a couple of people try that, but it would certainly seem like you could do that, but not so far.
And one last thing. And the Civil Air Patrol, I got to say, you guys, for that, is a great program, and thank you guys all for running that program there. It helps a lot of kids get into aviation for the future, so I appreciate it. My Boy Scouts did too when they were younger, so thank you.
Thank you. That they are very helpful to us as well. When we have events at the field, it's a great organization. So,
Thank you.
Anything else on the board? All right, just
Thank
thank
you
you,
all.
folks.
Thank you.
And if you could just keep us apprised of the
Thank you.
public meetings. And Mr. James,
Absolutely.
thank you for continuing to represent Carver to the commission.
Thank you.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
Ed.
it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry for the big numbers here, but we didn't mean to
The
overwhelm.
more the merrier. We're happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Next up on our agenda is continuing the discussion and possible votes for recommendation of draft annual town meeting articles. And you all should have a draft warrant. And we'll start from the beginning at Article 1. Is there a motion to put Article 1 on the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Mr. Belvin.
Have we received any of these reports from any of the different town officers for it?
What do we
Yeah.
say?
The town report is put together for the town meeting, so we don't generally see that as a whole until town meeting.
Right, but I just want to, like I said, are we starting to get some in here? So,
I think the deadline has
The
passed,
board,
hasn't it?
yeah, the board set the deadline, I think back in December, and the deadline has passed, so we're assembling it, and then it goes to print.
okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Is there a motion to recommend in Article 1?
I move that we recommend Article 1, which is the annual town report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Let's see. Article 2 is a financial article that we don't have information on yet. Correct, Mr. Fennessy?
Correct.
All right. So we'll
Yeah, if you can skip over all the.
skip that.
financial.
3 is the same. 4 is the same. Let's see. So the next one, the next non-financial article that we can talk about this evening is Article 8, correct?
Correct.
All right. So Article 8, the transfer and disposition of 11 Green Street.
I move that we already recommended this
I think
vote.
did we
On to
do
the-
that?
No,
I don't-
we recommended that it be placed on the warrant, but we haven't voted to recommend yet.
That's right, wasn't, okay, that's fine.
So I move that we recommend Article 8, the transfer and disposition of 11 Green Street, for the purpose of providing affordable housing to eligible persons honorably discharged from the United States military service.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Let's see, we don't have information on Article 9 or Article 10. Correct, Mr. Fennessy, we don't have information on Article 10?
Correct.
Right.
We
All
just
right.
started negotiations.
All right, so the next item we can discuss is Article 11. And I believe we voted at the last meeting to put Article 11 on the warrant, right?
Correct.
So we just need, is there a motion to recommend Article 11?
I move that we recommend Article 11, the acceptance of Montello Street, a portion thereof.
Second that.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Mr. Belvin.
It's going to be changed to Green Parkway is the name,
Correct.
and that's coming from the Route 58, the new Route 58, coming up and turning into there until it meets Plimpton, correct?
Yeah, so right now, with this new road, there'd be 2 Montello Streets technically, because it will be blocked off right after Abishan.
Right.
So the building commissioner and the public safety chiefs all got together, and due to the amount of people at the Silo Marketplace, they want to keep that Montello Street. And then that new entrance will only affect whatever goes in there plus one resident. So only one resident will need to change their address as opposed to many people.
Right.
So that new entrance will be the Green Parkway, and we'll get wording from town council on that article.
All right,
Question.
yes.
Can we take out the term eminent domain? Does it have to be in there?
Mr. Fennessy?
Yeah, this was drafted by council, so I'm assuming it does have to be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of us like those words.
No.
No.
But there's no intention to actually
That's
do
right.
that.
Well, of course, there's no intention, but that doesn't
Right.
mean it's not gonna happen.
But that's a very big deal, that there's no
Yeah,
intention.
That's true. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Let's see, the next article, so Article 12 brings us to the start of the zoning articles. Last year, this very same board voted to take no action on all of the zoning articles, I believe. Am I correct, Ms. Weston? Yeah, and would there be a similar thought among the board? Was it exactly the same board last year?
They haven't had any public hearings on these yet, so I would say we don't vote on any of these or make any until they have
But,
their.
I mean, last year, we made no recommendations at all.
That's
Right.
correct.
We did, so I guess, but the thought is, are we of, and that was the exact same board, so are we of the same mind this year that we take no
I
action?
suggest that we take no action, even after they meet, because they're zoning articles.
That's right. And it's, yeah, okay. Mr. Fennessy, do you recommend that we take a vote to take no action on these articles, or can we just choose to take no action?
No, you just take no action, but you vote to put them on the warrant.
All right, that's fine. Can we take one collective vote to put them on the warrant, or would you recommend we wait until after they hold their hearings?
I think you can do it now. You know, and
Yeah.
That's fine.
it's just putting it on there
And can we take one vote, or do we need individual votes?
individually.
Okay. All right, so that's fine. Is there a motion to put Article 12 on the warrant?
Okay. You get the relaxed look. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, if we vote to put this on the warrant, and then the planning department or board has their hearings and they decide to pull any of these, is that,
They'll be on the warrant, but we won't be voting on them. They will have been pulled.
okay.
They'll just announce at town meeting
Yeah.
that they're
Okay.
withdrawing them.
So in the past, and again, first going through this, is it, in the past, would the Board of Selectmen vote to put this on before the planning board is, or the planning department has done their due diligence on these? Or is it
I
better
think
to
it's
wait?
varied. I think it's varied. Would you prefer to wait?
I mean, I personally
we can
would
wait
rather
till-
wait.
Yeah,
Yeah.
March.
yeah, we can wait till the public, after the public hearings.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes?
Just, my thought process on this is similar to wait until they have the public hearings, because the wording can change technically after the public hearing. They can make changes of what they want to it.
I just think it's important, I didn't mean to cut you off, that we give them a sense of the board, if nothing else, that when they get through with their public hearings, they're gonna be on the warrant.
My other thought process, Mr. Chairman, is that we approve them to be on the warrant, and they always have the chance to take it off. And if they want to change the language, then they have to change it at town meeting, instead of changing it and then giving it to us. So basically, that's the difference, is that we're approving what's written here in this right now. But if it changes, then we'd have to take another vote for it.
I
So-
thought we were going to wait to put it on the warrant until after they had their public
I think
hearing.
it's a little easier to wait and make
Yeah.
sure, after they have the public hearing, make sure the wording is correct, and nobody has to do anything like that at town meeting.
Right, like I said, you play devil's advocate.
That's right.
I mean, I have no problem putting this, and I want them to understand that because we're not doing it now, it's not that we don't agree with it or we're gonna put it on. We're just turning around and saying, let's wait to make sure they have their public hearing. If they're gonna do changes, they have the opportunity to do changes before we go to print.
I think the only goal here tonight is to give them some guidance that,
Yeah.
yes, the articles will be on
Yeah.
town meeting warrant. All right, I think The next, let's see, Article 16. We voted to put Article 16 on the warrant. Did we also vote to approve Article 16? I thought we did at the last meeting.
I thought we did too.
We did, yeah.
We did, so we,
There was one that was voted. It could be this one.
yeah, I thought, because the
think we
police
did.
chief
Chief was
joined
here,
us for that.
right.
So am I correct there?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so Article 16 is all set. Let's see. Article 17, which we did earlier. We also did 18.
19.
We did 19. So that brings us, 20 we did, so I think that brings us to Article 21, which I think we voted to put on the warrant last time. A couple of thoughts that we may want to consider in Article 21. It's come to my attention that there are two, in addition to Article 21, there are two citizens petition articles that are virtually identical to Article 21. And I think it's possible, it may cause a lot of confusion at town meeting if we have one select board article and two citizen petition articles of virtually the same thing. There's nothing we can do about the citizens petition articles. They automatically go onto the town meeting warrant. So I wonder if the board wants to reconsider its vote to put Article 21 on the warrant. And Ms. Bogart, I know this was your article. I just, my thought is only to try to eliminate any possible confusion at town meeting, because there's, like I said, I think there's three very similar articles here.
One of the petition articles I submitted because before Mr. LaFond left, I emailed him and asked for a placeholder to bring to you guys to discuss, and I never heard back from him, and the deadline was approaching. So I wanted to make sure that it could go to town meeting, so I submitted a petition to make sure it's on there, and turns out there was a chance to bring it to the board. So I am fully prepared to pull my petition article if this can go through, but the reason I did that was because Mr. LaFond hadn't gotten back to me, and I didn't want it to be left behind. The other one, I have nothing to do with that.
No, I understand.
But then this one too, I mean, it has gone through town council. It's pretty clean. We can talk about it more too, the reasoning behind it. But the other petition article, I have no idea. But mine was just to make sure it was on because I hadn't heard back from him. So,
Mr. Fennessy, do you have any thoughts here?
Personally, I would leave this one on because it has gone through town council already. So we've already had that reviewed in the language. And then when this is drawn at town meeting, you could not move your petition on it.
yeah.
And I would assume if this passes, the other party would not move theirs. But I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Bellamy.
Yeah. If I'm correct, is a petitioner can always remove their article at any time. So, I mean, if Ms. Bogart is willing to remove it, her petition article, I think that's, as long as she puts it in writing that she's gonna remove it, then that's one less thing that we have to deal with.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the board? All right. So this is already on the warrant. Is there a motion to recommend Article 21?
I'll make a motion, we recommend
I'll
this.
second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive an email.
That was something totally different.
Yeah,
was
I
a
think
different
that,
one?
that
Okay.
was about
Yeah.
battery storage. not-
Okay, all right.
Yeah, this didn't touch
Okay,
that.
all right. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
this didn't have anything to do with this one.
Yeah, I guess if you guys had any questions, hesitations, anything about it, then I would field questions. I kind of gave my spiel last time as to why I had proposed it. I can say more or do more details, but it's kind of there. So if you have hesitations or have questions, please let me know. I can try to explain it. But like Bob said, when, if the warrant closes and that's on there, I will put in writing whenever that petition comes, so.
All right. Thoughts on the board? Anyone?
Well, I don't want to drag this out, but I'm just curious in what way solar panels have an impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the residents, in your opinion.
Yeah, from the cases that we've seen, there was the issue that I know was raised on Rochester Road with materials used there contaminating the water. And now that...
But that's not the panels, that's what goes in the
arrays.
ground, the post.
Yes, well, it goes with the solar array. This was aimed at the installations, not the panels themselves, but looking at what the installations are doing to
So
welfare. Now that they're being built, people are, I had one abutter say, I really had no idea what this was going to be when I was approached to have it in my backyard. So now that it's coming to fruition, people are starting to understand it more. So let's just look.
So I guess my question is, isn't that something that should be addressed by the planning board and/or the Conservation Commission? I mean, because they're the ones who write the orders of conditions for the type of pole that's to be put in the ground.
Yes, and that's something that I am proposing be done in this one-year moratorium, to have the planning board, other town officials to stop and have those conversations in an uninterrupted chunk of time where they don't have to deal with new permits, but can have those conversations amongst each other with other people, have residents bring in information. So yes, that should be among the many things that I think should be discussed and looked at. Maybe things are great, but now that things are happening, I think it's imperative that the town take the time to reassess things and to just make sure it's all being done in the town's best interest.
Mr. Belvin.
My opinion on this is we're trying to be a little more proactive in looking at how things are done than reactive. And unfortunately, the issue with the poles being put into the ground, that they weren't permitted, and I think that basically saying, hey, let's stop, let's look at this, let's make sure that all our ducks in a row when we do permitting for it. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive, and that's what this is. Let's put the brakes on a little bit, okay? Let's go through this again, all right? And if we need to change our bylaws, we come back next year to do it. That's what this does, and I think this is a good idea to be proactive.
Oh, I think being proactive is a terrific idea. The problem is that you said these weren't permitted. They were permitted, but the applicants changed the poles. And that's what went wrong. The Conservation Commission nipped it in the bud. I don't think this is a question of the permitting. I mean, I don't understand why we're meddling with their permitting process. I suppose that's what I'm getting at. They permitted X, and the applicants put in Y. They've straightened it out.
It's not straightened out yet. They're still in the ground, but...
No, but there is a timeline. I don't know if you were at that meeting, but I was, and they set a timeline, and supposedly people are going to keep to it, because it's been very much in the public eye and should not have happened.
Right.
But again, to me, this is an issue that the Planning Board and Conservation Commission have dealt with and should deal with.
Well, this gives them the opportunity to deal with it.
Well, if I could, my only thought on, I'm sorry, Ms. Ewens, I didn't mean to.
I'm sorry, it was just my opinion. I'm not suggesting, if I vote against this, I'm not suggesting that I'm against being proactive or that I think what these applicants did was good. I don't. I am proactive, and I don't think what they did was good. I just don't think it's something for us to figure out.
And I guess my own thought on this, I mean, I certainly echo those thoughts. I think we need to be proactive, but with this type of article, I really wish, I always prefer to have public input on these things. I wish it had come from the planning board. I wish there had been a public hearing where people could speak on it. I think there's a lot in here, and I wish it'd come in a different way. I think we need to be proactive. Certainly the polls that went into that bog in South Carver, I have the same concerns I think everybody has about that. Whenever there's an article about this, like this, I always prefer to see it come through the planning board process where there's public hearings and things like that.
Well,
So,
this was not meant to trigger a zoning article at all. I asked last time too, because my original petition did not amend zoning, and something like this was brought forth in another town, and it was brought forth by the select board there. It didn't come from planning board. It wasn't amending anything. It was just a moratorium. And I believe Mr. Fennessy said this will actually go to the planning board for a public hearing, but it's going to the public at town meeting. That's as public a hearing as can be. That's who would decide this. And this was no knee-jerk reaction to any specific project. This was overall, that was one part. Like I said last time, Carver's being talked about as a parade of projects through town. It wasn't just that. There's subjective language in the bylaw. The word approximately really messed things up on another project, and approximately is going to come down the pipeline again. And that's just that. And the financial implications too. I cannot get over the fact that former building instructor looked me in the eye and said, you guys are being taken advantage of. You're gonna regret this. You can charge so much more in fees. And that's coming from the building inspector. So it's not one project. It's not stepping on anyone's toes. When the polls came up, the planning board and the conservation commission were involved, but I know that's part of, the resident didn't know who to turn to. It's here, do I go planning or commission? There was confusion. So in these 12 months, if approved, those discussions could be had. So the first time a resident or anyone reaches out with a concern, there's a process. Okay, you need to bring this to this board. There's just a lot to think about, because when the bylaw was written, there really wasn't too much going. I mean, you experienced the one on Great Meadow, but a lot's changed, and this really just lets the town boards, commissions, officials, anyone have a conversation of what has happened, what do we want to happen, what's the objective with solar. When we approved this, is it being enacted the way that we intended it to and hoped it would? And instead of just having project go through the board, because I go back to a former planning director told me he felt very pressured to get projects approved in just a couple meetings. It's not me. It's not me just bringing this. It's not knee-jerk anti-solar at all. But it's taking a pause to let a lengthy or a conversation happen that doesn't have to get pushed through. It doesn't change the bylaw, doesn't remove the bylaw. Any potential changes would happen in the future. Changes nothing. It just gives the town a pause to step back and say, okay, what's going well and what do we need to look at in the next 12 months that would benefit us, the overall town. It's not just polls. This was well thought out, and it came from a select board in another town. It's not a zoning, not meant to step on anyone's toes.
Okay. Anything else?
Yep.
Mr. Pettis.
So just for clarification, it's going to have a public hearing on March 2nd or 3rd with the planning board. And it might be something that maybe the board wants to wait till after that public hearing to vote on this. But it's up to you.
What's the date of the public hearing?
March 2nd or 3rd.
Do we have enough time to wait till our second meeting in March to vote on this?
Yeah, so that's fine.
That's fine, so we could wait till that March, what would it be, March 15th? That's the second meeting, I think?
Right. Gotta cut me close, though. I think it was last last day. Yeah, okay.
That's-
Yeah, that would be.
that's
part of the
okay?
Last day, she said.
All right. Does anybody have an issue with waiting till after the public hearing to vote on this?
No.
Anyone?
I just have a comment.
Mr. Hoffman?
So I agree with the concept, of take a step back, but I guess my confusion or just question is, so during the moratorium period, the planning board, select board, and other town officials shall conduct a review of the Carver zoning bylaw, excuse me, 3580, and et cetera there, but without a subcommittee or something put together, how do we know that's even gonna happen? Because what I don't want is worst-case scenario that we put a moratorium on and nothing happens. And then a year later, we're at the same thing because we never had the discussions. You know, the planning board changes, the select board changes, it's just falls through the cracks or whatever. So I don't know, do we add a little more bite to this or how does that happen? I mean, because I can see both sides of it, but again, the worst thing we could ever do is, you know, have the hearing, everybody approves it, gets approved at town meeting, and then after next year at this time, we're gonna say, we didn't do a thing on that. So there's really no trigger to, you know what I mean, do we need something to trigger a phase 2 of this?
Mr. Bell?
I think the phase 2 of that is right after, if it passes at town meeting, all right, I'm sure we're gonna have a select board member standing here saying, on the first agenda after town meeting, I want this on for discussion, so we can go ahead and go forward with this. So, I mean, I think that's the trigger. It's whatever town meeting wants to do. If they vote in favor of it, great, no problem. I'm sure we're gonna have a select board member, the very next meeting, wanna put it on the agenda, and then that'll trigger. If they vote against it, then it's a moot point.
Yeah, it's like with anything we do. And not just you talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk. Multiple times in here, we've said we're going to do something, and then nothing ever happens of it.
That's what I'm saying, do we
So-
put that, a committee, you know, that's in part of the language in here, that this does, if this does get approved, that first meeting, or within those first couple months, we put a committee together, and then this does come to fruition.
Yeah, I didn't go that far into suggesting specific players, but it falls on the town to do that. And, you know, as Bob said, I'm willing to continue with this if it gets approved. I think it's just important for the town to take this time to look at things and rethink things, because in my opinion, the town could be doing things better for the town, for the residents, and I don't think there's anything wrong in just taking a little break. Things that were approved, keep going. Nothing changes.
Just a couple of points. I think to Mr. Hoffman's point, the wording is the planning board, the select board, and other town officials shall conduct a review. We can control what the select board does, but we can't control what other town boards or town officials do. So just a point, that's all.
That wording came from town council.
That's fine. I'm just making the point that we can appoint a select board subcommittee to do whatever, but we can't do anything about the planning board or
Right.
other town officials. What would the board, we have a motion and a second. Would the board prefer to table this to our March 15th meeting, or would they prefer to vote on it now?
I prefer that we table it.
Anyone else? Anyone have an issue with tabling it?
No issue with table.
All right, so we'll table this to our March 15th select board meeting. All right.
So that was to vote, that was to recommend, correct?
Yes. Do you have an
I'll
issue
rescind my
with
vote.
withdrawing your motion?
I'll rescind my vote. I'll withdraw it, yeah.
All right. Any issues, Ms. Bogart, if we put it off until that March 15th meeting?
I just hope that if you guys have reservations, you're asking now.
Yeah.
So we've already voted to put this on the warrant, correct?
Yeah, we
Right.
voted to put it on the warrant,
Okay.
but we haven't voted
voted
to
to-
recommend or
Okay.
not recommend. All right, the next article we'll be discussing, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fennessy, is Article 26.
23.
I'm sorry?
What about 22?
What about 22?
Perhaps I skipped one.
22 is the zoning.
I'm sorry? Oh, okay.
Oh, that's right, it's zoning.
So 22 is zone, and
So-
Article 26, we
23.
agreed to...
Mr. Chair?
23.
So Article 23, I did speak with the representative at Fish and Game, and I'm going to withdraw this article for
Okay.
this particular town meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Hewens. I
You're
skipped
welcome.
right over that one.
That's okay.
So thank you. And Article 26, we agreed to leave until our March 1st meeting with the Finance Committee.
March 1st, yes.
So, that brings us to a number of, correct me if I'm wrong, that brings us to Mr. Belbin's articles. Am I correct here? The first one is the interim town administrator bylaw, or the town administrator bylaw? Correct?
Mhm.
All right. So, Ms. Hewens, would you like a brief break?
Oh, yes, sorry.
All right, let's take a, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Back in session. We have a number of placeholder articles by Mr. Belbin. The first one is the interim town administrator screening committee bylaw. I know we had a number of discussions about this at the last meeting. Is there a motion? Does anyone have any questions, or is there a motion to put this on the warrant?
I don't actually have it in front of me. Do we have a copy of it?
I don't think we have a copy.
I don't think we of the.
I think Mr. Belvin made some suggestions. I think we had some discussion at the last meeting about some thoughts Mr. Belvin had about it, putting together a bylaw with detailing who the screening committee would be. And I think the discussions were, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Belvin, I believe the discussions were, did we want to specify for future boards who would comprise the screening committee, or whether we would leave that to future boards to put together at the appropriate time.
It's
So-
too bad we don't have it, the wording.
Yeah, I don't think well, perhaps there was some specific wording, but my sense was at the last meeting that the consensus of the board was that they would prefer to leave it let future boards put together the screening committee. But Mr. Belvin, why don't you briefly speak to this, and then we'll...
So, yeah, I mean, I submitted my language for changes that I felt on the town administrator bylaw.
I thought we were talking about the screening committee.
Right, but it was included, the screening committee was included in that.
Right.
Because I'm reading it right now from what I sent you, everyone, for this to be put on, where the screening committee membership would have 9 members, all town residents, no town employee or immediate family members of town employees. Select board appoints 5, and that was off because no one, then I got the sense that people didn't want to pick out what they wanted, and then I was getting the sense that no one really wanted to do anything with the screening committee, period, and just leave it up to whatever board comes in. And don't tell another board what they don't want to do, but.
Yep. And that's the sense I got as
Right.
well. So is there a motion here, or would you like to withdraw this, Mr. Belvin, or?
Well, that's where it comes up, because there were other things within that. If we just want to do the screening committee part of it, I'll be happy to take that out, because, like I said, the consensus of the board was, don't do anything for a screening committee, let the next board deal with it. So I'll be happy to take that portion out.
Okay, so that
But there
will
were
move us
more.
along to the town administrator bylaw.
Yes.
So, I looked at this in the period between the meetings, and my thoughts on this, I think I said this at the last meeting, my thoughts on this have changed in the last year since we first discussed it. And the more I look at it, the less inclined I am to make a lot of changes. there are a couple of obvious changes that I think need to be made. Some we probably don't need to vote on. Obviously, the bylaw refers over and over again to the Board of Selectmen. Obviously, anywhere the Board of Selectmen is mentioned, it needs to be changed to Select Board. I think that goes without saying. On the very first part, the job description, item number 3.3.1.1, it says the Board of Selectmen should be the Select Board, shall appoint a town administrator from a list prepared by a screening committee. It never specifies who should put together the screening committee. I think the intent was always that that would be the Select Board, so it probably should say that. It probably should say the screening committee shall be appointed by the Select Board.
The copy that I have from Sarah actually has that sentence.
It may be, that may be a change that we discussed in the
Yeah, this,
the period, but as we go along, I'm not sure we need a lot of changes here. I think there is some ambiguity, but I think in some cases that ambiguity is good because we don't know. We don't know how long. We may want to offer somebody a longer or a shorter contract.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't know.
I agree, and like, as you say, you don't really want to dictate that to future boards.
And so those are my thoughts. Sometimes like I said, a year or so ago, I thought we needed more changes. But as time has gone on and we've gone through the town administrator selection process and interviewed town administrators and seen what can come up, I now think we need less. Those are just my thoughts, and obviously I'd like to hear from the rest of the board.
So the only thing that I agree with your points, and I also think the only thing that really does need to be changed is the phrase, and I'm sorry I don't have my copy in front of me, but the phrase that talks about the town administrator can have a job outside, or can't work outside of the town administrator, have a job with a private person, company, whatever, unless it's okay with the select board. I do think that probably should not be okay with the select board. I think if your town administrator has time to have a second job, I'm not sure that he or she is doing their job. So that would just be my only thought.
yeah, can I?
What section is that, Jim?
3.3.3.4.
Yeah, just, again, last time we said we've got a lot of versions, everybody come back and look at it, and I do default back to this one that Sarah gave us last time that we had talked about. It's not a lot of changes. I think it's these changes that are proposed, it's just in 2 sections.
Yeah.
They make sense and they are minor, so if you don't have this in front of you, it does change all the Board of Selectmen to select boards. Then in 3.3.1.2, the select board shall appoint the town administrator to serve for term, here's where it turns red, where the change is, not to exceed 5 years, and shall fix compensation for such person within the amount appropriated by the town. At no time shall a contract be more than 5 years. The contract is subject to extension only in the last year of the contract.
Yep.
That's that. So there's that change that I still feel is a good idea. And this is where we talked, our last meeting where I think it spurned some conversation was 3.3.1.3. The select board may appoint an interim town administrator for a period not to exceed 6 months. The select board may appoint an ITA for successive 6-month periods as they deem necessary. This last meeting was when we were talking, and I think, Mark, you had led the conversation of maybe you didn't want it to be like exactly 6 months. I forget, that was a conversation last time that I don't remember what it was, but we seemed to kind of be in consensus if you remember what you said.
Yeah, I think the thought was that we didn't want to get to the end of a 6-month period and have not made a hire and have to appoint another interim for another 6 months when we may only need them for a month or 2.
Right, which the conversation was, well, is a 18-month or 2-year contract an interim? So that was the language that we didn't decide on last time, which I think then made you say, let's all come back next time and think about that. So I think that was the wording we hadn't agreed on. And then the only other change, other than this random parentheses that Sarah had changed was the 3334. Town administrator shall devote full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elective or appointive, nor engage in any business or occupation during such service.
Period.
That's it.
Yep,
So
I agree.
Yep.
So under 3313, are we suggesting that the second sentence, the select board may appoint an interim TA for successive 6-month periods
No, I
This
don't.
is the one I'm referencing if you want to look at it.
as they deem necessary? You're suggesting we keep that in so as not to,
I'm sorry, could you?
sorry, under 3313, the second sentence, allowing future select boards to appoint interim TAs, excuse me, for, excuse me, successive 6-month periods as they deem necessary. Are you suggesting we should leave that in? Excuse me.
No, what I'm suggesting I'm going to read, it's easier, I think, if I read the whole thing. The select board may appoint an interim town administrator for a period not to exceed 6 months. I think after that, perhaps what we need is, if the board feels they need to make this change, maybe we need something like the select board may appoint an interim town administrator for successive periods as they deem necessary. Not successive 6-month periods, because what do we do if we only need someone for another month or two? That's, I think, the concern I had there.
I'm good with that.
So, but I think what we should probably do to avoid talking about this all night is to take each suggested change and vote on them as they come up, because otherwise I think we're going to be going round and round a lot. So I don't even think we need a vote to change Board of Selectmen to Select Board. I think that just would occur.
Draft that Sarah had that had the.
Do you have one that could pass out to us? I'm not sure what we're referencing.
She gave them out at the last meeting. I just gave
And I
Mark
forgot to
my
bring my,
copy.
do you want to make a copy of this?
Yeah.
At the last meeting, we passed out the original and everyone was gonna work off of that.
Well, like 3 copies.
Yeah, this is the original, this is, I think, the changes from the last.
Those were the changes we made on December 8th, I think.
Yeah.
Hang on.
I kept
While
the copies
Ms.
there.
Weston makes some copies for the board, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Back in session. I think it's probably best with this bylaw, it's a long, complicated bylaw, that we start from the top of 3.3.1 and go through any changes the board wants to make and vote on them individually, so we're not all over the place here. So, obviously, I think the first one was 3.3.1.2. So,
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Ewens.
I move that we approve this section. The select board shall appoint the town administrator to serve for a term not to exceed 5 years, and shall fix compensation for such persons within the amount appropriated by the town. At no time shall a contract be more than 5 years. The contract is subject to extension only in the last year of the contract.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that particular item? Anyone? All right, hearing none. All in favor of that change?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it is unanimous. Next is 3.3.1.3. And I think the wording we agreed on here, correct me if I'm wrong, is the select board may appoint an interim town administrator for a period not to exceed 6 months. The select board may appoint, the select board may then appoint an interim town administrator for successive periods as they deem necessary.
I'll make that motion.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, Mr. Ferris.
So I would put in, select board may appoint an interim town administrator for a an initial period not to exceed 6
Oh,
months.
that's a good idea. Mhm.
So you're starting with 6 months, and then you could add the month.
That's
Okay.
an excellent change, thank you.
I will amend my motion.
All right. Is there a second?
A second.
You have a second. Discussion?
Do we have to state why we're appointing an interim town administrator, or under what circumstances? Or is that a given?
I think it's a given.
Okay.
You only do that if you don't have a permanent one.
Right, I'm just throwing it out there.
And in all honesty, I'm not sure you can even know all the circumstances when you may
Okay.
need an interim. Almost anything could happen, so. Any other discussion on that? Mr. Belvin?
I don't know if I'm in the wrong spot here, but
3.3.1.3.
3. Yeah, it was the one before that. Okay. Go ahead. No, that's fine.
All right. All right. Ms. Weston, could you just read back that language?
The select board may appoint an interim town administrator for an initial period not to exceed 6 months. The board may then appoint an interim town administrator for successive periods as they deem necessary.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Any suggested changes to 3.3.1.4? Okay. The next change, I think, someone stop me if I'm wrong, is to 3.3.3.4,
No.
correct?
3.3.2, you want to clean up the numbers that are
3.3.
Yeah,
messed up.
it's
To
like
make it 5 years.
typos.
Could you, which one are
So
we?
It's the black writing.
3.2.3 should be 3.3.2.2.
Right. And prior to that, the second sentence in 3321 is the professional experience shall include at least 3 years. You want to add a parentheses around at the beginning of the number 3.
All right.
And then, as Mr. Fennessy said, 3323 should be changed to 3323. Thank you. 22.
Those are just typos.
Correct.
Okay.
Cleaning the typos.
Yeah.
So the next item, 3.3.3.4.
So I think you should make a motion, though.
You think so?
Yeah,
The
because you're
typos.
changing that.
I'll make a motion that we fix the typos that are in
3.3.2.
3.3.2 under qualifications.
Okay.
That covers
I'll
the
second the
whole
motion.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
section.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. So then we get down to the discussion of the changes under 3.3.3.4. And this is where we discuss the town administrator and his full-time, devoting full-time to the office of town administrator. Here's the only thing I would point out about that before we make any changes. And I understand where these changes are coming from. But I think there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, from some of the people I know, there are town administrators that, for instance, do some teaching at a local school or something like that, and it's not a full-time job. It's a very small part-time job, but they do it, and that would be an issue. I would also point out that if we changed that, we couldn't have hired Mr. Fennessy, because Mr. Fennessy had a couple of things continuing from his law practice, not a lot, but they were there. So I think we need to be very careful on this item. I understand the thought, but you know, it may be something that we want to think about a little bit. Anyway, I'd like to hear from the board on it.
Well, I'm thinking that maybe the language could be changed at the very end. Shall not hold any other public office nor engage in any business or occupation during such service during official working hours. I mean, I think that was really one of the big issues. Or we could add, with the exception of a private practice or teaching that does not occupy, I mean, I don't know, but you could qualify it somehow?
If I may,
Sure.
I would say something like, without the consent or vote of the board. And leave it up to the board to.
Well, but that's the way it was before.
That's what it says now.
Oh,
And that's
the
what,
board voted?
Yeah, let me
Yeah, it was-
read-
yeah,
let me
it was
read what
4 to
says-
1. Mhm.
Let me read what the wording is right now, then maybe that would be helpful. Right now, the wording is, "The town administrator shall devote full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elected or appointed or appointive, nor engage in any business or occupation during such service unless such action is approved in advance by the Board of Selectmen." Obviously, it should be Select Board.
so we had a situation where that was approved 4 to 1.
Idea. Because you have some, you said you know someone who teaches.
I think there are
There-
multiple town
there are lots
administrators
of
that
them.
probably
And,
do.
Yeah.
and Mr. Fennessy does have his practice. One, this says the town administrator, so not the interim town administrator. So you're good with us. But could
But I
we?
wouldn't be able to apply.
Yeah.
for
So
something like that.
if we want to qualify it, can we qualify it in that this coming round? If we have someone who applies who currently has a part-time teaching position or something going on, you know, he was very open in his interview with what he has and what he's wrapping up. So at time of hiring, if someone is doing something that we or are made aware of, then that could possibly continue. But once hired, you cannot take on new business, occupation, employments. Because at that point, you should devote full-time here.
But what is full-time? Is that weekends too? And,
Well,
know,
you should-
You know,
Well,
suppose you have a snow plow and you're plowing, you know, for snowstorms. That's another job.
Right. Well,
You
and
know?
what she's discussing is a little tricky. So I
Yeah.
lean more just taking the phrase out completely, and having it as written here, unless we're gonna qualify, unless someone has something when they're hired. Because having that with, you know, unless the board says okay, can,
And I would point out, it's qualified right now. They can't do it unless the board okays it. It says right now, unless such action is approved in advance by the board, by the select board.
That's what most bylaws.
You know, and I understand that there's things that have happened in the past that perhaps shouldn't have happened, but it does have to be approved by the select board. So, anyway, those are my thoughts. Mr. Belvin.
Okay. One of the things on my copy that I have on my thing that I submitted was that we exempt volunteering outside of the Carver. But I kind of like the idea of a pre-existing employment language for it. So if we had something to the extent of volunteering outside of Carver or conducting pre-existing employment opportunities prior to hiring in the town of Carver. So that covers all the bases there. It covers volunteering outside of the town, and it covers if they had other jobs prior to that they were doing. It covers that ability to do that. I mean, or if we just put also on the end of that, it says not in Carver, not conducting business in Carver, or something like that. I mean, the worst case scenario is that we turn around and get in a situation again where we have the highest tax-paying business in town, and the town administrator is the employee of that. So, I mean, then you turn around and it's like, that seems like a huge conflict of interest. I mean, and I think, I don't like that idea. So I think
But that
we need
was
to have
appro-
something.
Again, they can't do anything unless it's approved by the select board. Anyway, would someone like to make a motion on some type of language on 3.3.3.4? Or would we like to leave it the way it is?
no, I'd like to make a motion, but I'm gonna, I guess, ask you, Mr. Fennessy, for your legal advice. How would we add in that, the qualifying language where if you were to come into the position with another job, that would be allowable, like Bob was saying, you know, but you can't take on new employment once in the job. Like if we do it as written, you know, nor engage in any business or occupation during such service except for employment you had before being hired, what would the appropriate legalese be?
You know, and I hear your point. One of my concerns, not for me, but in general, is that suppose you had a real estate business, because we had this in one of the towns I worked in. One of the assessors had a real estate business and was working that real estate business during the day while he was assessing. So it's an issue, I think, taking your side, not the town administrator's side, to have that language would say, okay, good, I told you I have a real estate, I have a law office, I have that means you're granting that person the right to do those things.
Yeah.
So I still think you need that agreement by the Board of Selectmen on anything that they do. You know, so having that, maybe, you know, pre-existing positions, as long as that also goes to a vote of the Board of Selectmen. You know, you want to protect yourself from somebody doing a full-time job, 2 full-time jobs
Right.
in here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think, I appreciate that. Here's my thought. Nor engage in any business or occupation during such service, occupation in the town of Carver. All right, so that would preclude your law practice, obviously, is not in the town of
And
Carver.
just to put it out there, I'm not doing my law practice.
I understand.
I haven't done it in over a month, so it's over.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying that if that should come up.
But I do teach. I do teach in college.
And that's
At night.
actually something I think a TA should be allowed to do. So my suggestion would be that it reads, nor engage in any business or occupation in the town of Carver during such service with the following exemptions: volunteering and any previous employment when hired.
Yeah, I don't know, it just gets in Carver. Is that physically in Carver? Is that, what if you do business with someone who
Any business or
lives in
occupation
Carver?
in the town of Carver.
But like,
So
I'm
you
just
couldn't.
playing devil's, like,
You
what
couldn't work for someone who had a business in the town of Carver.
if, can you work with someone who lives in Carver? Like, oh, I have a coworker who lives there. We work at another business, but
Well, this specifies that the business or occupation is in the town of Carver.
yeah,
So if they have another business in Kingston,
yeah.
as long as they're not doing it, as long as they're still devoting full time to the office here.
I think in my contract, I think it says devoting full-time during the general office hours of the town administrator.
Correct.
No, we said town hall hours.
Yeah, town hall. Yeah, we changed it to town hall
Yeah.
office hours.
And I thought
Yep.
that was good,
Mhm.
because that kind of defines it.
Yep.
On what's
Can I-
you're limited
can
to,
I
you're
just-
not doing something else.
Can I just ask the board, and I understand what happened in the past, but right now, this language says that the town administrator can't do anything unless we approve it. They have to come to us, and we have to take a vote to allow them to do it. What's wrong with that? I mean, they can't do it unless we say it's okay. We can't anticipate everything that somebody might do. Heck, it might change during their contract. They might come to us 2 years in and say, hey, I'm interested in this volunteer opportunity has come to me, or I'm interested in teaching this class, or it's a couple of hours a week, and we discuss it. I think that gives us a lot of control right now. The way it is, I think it gives us an awful lot of control, because no matter what they want to do, they can't do it unless we say it's okay.
Right, but then it stays political. I mean, I think you understand what I mean.
No, I understand, and I understand the reason for the discussion.
And I do get what you're saying too,
I just think we have to look forward, and I'm just trying to look forward and not look back. That's all. And
I think if we try to drill down in every possible scenario, we're never going to get one, and we're never going to agree on that. There might be something that we didn't think of, and that slipped through the cracks type thing that, I kind of agree with what Mark said, that they can't do anything unless it's approved by the Board of Selectmen. And you would hope the board that is in at that time would do what was right.
this gives us a lot of control right now. It really
Yeah.
does.
That can be good and bad.
Yeah,
No,
I
you're right,
guess.
you're right. As can everything, right? Yeah.
No, not necessarily.
Well, I've always thought, and I've said before in my personal life, look at the past, act in the present to plan for the future. And I know it gives, the way it's written gives boards control and stuff, but you can't ignore or forget what has happened. So I do think changes are warranted. So Sarah, can you reread what you wrote about the in Carver?
Yes, so the town administrator shall devote full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elected or appointed, nor engage in any business or occupation in the town of Carver during town hall office hours. And then I just have a phrase, semicolon, with the exemptions of volunteer work or any previous employment. Or we could change that, volunteer work and teaching.
I would take out the town hall office hours part. Because if you're still working for something in town, there could potentially still be a conflict, whether you're doing it at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday or 7:05 on a Tuesday, or 6:59 or 7:05. That
Okay,
kind of,
so, nor engage in any business or occupation in the town of Carver during such service, semicolon.
Yeah.
And we'll have to clean up this phrase, but I just wrote with the exemptions of volunteer work or teaching, or whatever you guys want to put in
Yeah.
as an exemption.
okay.
Mr. Belvin.
The only issue that I see where you put in the town of Carver is it appears that you're only saying that he can't hold public office and elected or appointed in Carver. All right, where the intent of this was to hold any public office, elected or appointed, anywhere.
So after
That was the
elected,
original thought process
so
for
after
that.
elected and appointed, you can put in any town in the state of Massachusetts. How's that? Nor engage in any business or occupation in the town of Carver during such service.
Why is it limited to Carver?
Well, that's my,
Because
that was my point.
that was where the perceived conflict arose.
So it's okay, and I'm just flip side, so it's okay if they have a job in Kingston?
As long as it's not during, as long as it, well, I suppose so. But that means they could have a weekend job in Kingston, because full-time in Carver is full-time. So if they have a night job in Kingston or a weekend job, I suppose that's what it means.
Again, we're never going to get somewhere that meets every criteria, but I think what Sarah is reading improves upon what's there. Because in my head, it doesn't meet everything that's going on in my head, but it's an improvement. So I can support it as Sarah was reading. It improves on things.
All right, you want me to read it one more time? The town administrator shall devote full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elected or appointed, in any town in Massachusetts, nor engage in any business or occupation in the town of Carver during such service, semicolon, with the following exemptions of volunteer work and teaching.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve that language change to 3.3.3.4.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would like to ask Mr. Fennessy, what is your opinion on that?
Yes.
As a,
So from a town administrator's perspective,
from all your,
all my experience
all your
and all the
perspective.
places I've been, generally, it's the board's discretion. It's not, if you list just 2 occupations, again, you don't know what somebody else is doing. They may They may be working, it might be somebody who works in a nursing home on a Sunday and has been doing that for 20 years and still wants to do that. And now it's not one of those two teaching.
Well, you could add or any previous occupation.
Yeah, I mean, there's gotta be a qualifier. there.
Okay, so let's,
And still, from my selectman's hat, I still would want to leave it to the discretion of the selectman to make that final decision. You know, not just because somebody teaches, what if I was teaching full-time? You know? Or somebody was teaching full-time. You know, you still want to leave that when they come in to interview, when they come in for negotiations. That's one of the things you say, look, you know, it's up to the Board of Selectmen to decide whether you can do that other what you're doing. So, I know it's hard. It's hard to try and pick out every little part.
well, I
You know,
think,
and that's why they're generally kind of a broad language that are in these, given the discretion to the Board of Selectmen.
well, I think, how about this? Semicolon, with the following exemptions: volunteer work, teaching, and/or any previous jobs. The language isn't very good.
I know, yeah.
It's going to have to be made better. But as you say, that way, if they have a real estate job
You
on
don't
the,
know what they're
right.
coming in with.
So that's
you
why
know?
I said, or any. But obviously, somebody can't be doing the
But
full-time
it-
job
yeah,
of town
and-
administrator
and I
and
would-
a second
yeah.
job full-time.
And again, I kind of like the language on the selectmen's side of the language of during town hall hours, so you know that, you know, the person can't sell real estate at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, you know, and go
Yeah.
show houses,
Yeah.
you know?
Might I suggest, it seems like we're having some difficulty coming up with language with that one particular item. Maybe we leave that for now, finish the rest of this bylaw, think for the next meeting on that one item, and come back with some language that we
Yeah.
can propose, some cleaned up language.
Yeah.
That work for everybody?
Okay,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
I'll-
because you're gonna need the whole language anyway for the,
Right.
if it's going on the warrant.
Yes,
That's
yes,
right.
we are. So,
So I rescind that motion, because I had made a motion to
you
approve.
you did. Would you be
Yes.
okay about withdrawing that? And then
Yep.
we'll
Yeah, withdraw, yes.
perhaps each can come back with some language, and we'll vote on it. So the next change that I see on this, just.
Oh, I think it was under
343.
343. It was just a typo. The
Less.
third line down where it starts
Yeah.
board, but not, not less than 1 year, once a year.
Right, 3.4.3. Is there a motion to correct that typo?
No, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I,
And then, Mr. Chair, under 3456,
yeah,
second line, there's another typo, COTES should be V as in very, OTES.
Make a motion that you make that
Correct.
change.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
It's been like that since
Ooh.
1790.
Wait, guys, I found one. I found one we missed. In 3454, the town administrator shall be responsible for the maintenance and repair, rental, and used of all town buildings, so that used should become use.
Use.
And then it says, town buildings and facilities placed under the town administrator's control by his bylaw should be this bylaw. By vote of the town or otherwise. So take off the D in used and add a T to his to turn it to this. So make a motion to make those two changes.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Is that it for this bylaw?
Actually, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I want to bring back the language that I had offered for conflict of interest language for the town administrator.
Which one, under which?
It's a new section that I
Oh,
had put.
okay.
where I stated, during the term of office for the town administrator, the select board will be the sole governing authority of a conflict. Any issue that shows a potential appearance of conflict arises related to the duties of the town administrator. The select board shall have all powers to investigate any allegation of misconduct involving employees, elected officials, and appointed officials. The select board shall have the final decision on any issue of discipline, demotion, removal, termination of employees and appointed officials when a conflict arises between employees and appointed officials and the town administrator. Elected officials cannot be disciplined, demoted, or removed by the select board, but we can still investigate them. That was a side note. And then if an employee bargaining unit, bargaining association, or union contract is involved, the contract must be followed in regards to discipline and/or appeal of discipline. I had submitted that the last time. I think that needs to be put in due to public records requests that came out. It's clear that things should have been done that weren't done, and we as the select board need to turn around and make sure everyone's held accountable. Here we have a member of our screening committee here coming up here and saying that people have to be held accountable. So in this conflict of interest,
Let's keep personalities out of it. or
no, I'm just relaying to what he said, Mr. Chairman, is that people held accountable. So I mean, I think that having some type of a language that allows the Board of Selectmen, if there's a conflict that arises, that we can act upon that.
I think there was some pretty extensive discussion about this particular item at our
There
last
was.
meeting.
There was.
Does anyone see a need to discuss this further? Are there any more thoughts?
Well, can I ask on that?
Sure.
If it doesn't get in here, can we put that on a future agenda to have a discussion either with us? I don't know if we would have to bring in KP and Tim Zessen to find out, but I think it's worth a conversation to find out if we, as a board, have a concern over discipline the town administrator takes or not, or doesn't take on an employee. How do we handle that? Not that we're going back to the old days and punishing people willy-nilly at us, because that's not the conversation I want to have. But if we did have a concern about it, what can we do to talk about it and potentially address it? So if it doesn't go here, I'd like to have that conversation.
You're looking to get
because
some information from KP, basically.
something as to what we could do, because I remember how Sarah explained the past, and that's not, I don't think the board should take over being everybody's punisher. But if we do have a concern about over or under discipline, as the town administrators, bosses, what can we do? I don't even know. So can we have that conversation in the future? If it, maybe you don't include it here, but just have a conversation.
I don't know how we'd structure it, because I'd
Yeah.
have to find out. I don't know whether it would, I think we'd have to talk to
Yeah.
Greg and see exactly how we structure something
Mhm.
like that. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I don't know how we structure it. And I'd have to
Right.
speak to Greg Corbo, I think, before I could
Yeah,
probably speak more
yeah.
on it.
Wouldn't something like that come more under Chapter 2, which is the elected town officials, boards, committees, and commission, and the 2.2 Board of Selectmen? Wouldn't that come under the or Board of Selectmen bylaw versus this is just about the town administrator? I understand what you're saying, Bob, but I think this will have more, what you want to recommend would be under what the selectmen can and can't do, and that's what's in this 2.2. Because I was looking at this after hearing because I missed that meeting, and I was trying to see what was in our governing document that gave the select board, that we have authority to do that right now, and we just didn't know it. But I don't see anything listed, so I think that would probably be in this.
It may be, and there. Go ahead, Mr. Galvin.
No, I want to limit it to certain areas of conflicts. Okay, it's not that we're turning around and going to overrule every decision that the
Right.
town administrator can make. All right, what I am doing is, if there is a conflict, where there is a clear conflict, okay, that the Board of Selectmen can take action. And it gives us that authority too. So whether it's in the select board one or the town administrator one, okay, but the town administrator, that's gotta go to the state, correct?
It does. And I think we're getting a little astray of the conversation that's on the agenda tonight, which is town meeting warrant articles. There's nothing about the select board article on the town meeting warrant, so I think what we need to do is vote on Mr. Belbin's suggestion for an addition to the town administrator bylaw.
So if I may make one quick comment, just to remind everyone that my issues with this are threefold. One is who defines what a conflict is. Number two is that I am not in favor of bringing back the days of, the good old days of politics. It was the reason we, back in '96, instituted the role of town administrator in the first place, was to take the politics out of the day-to-day working at town hall.
Would anyone like Mr. Belbin to reread the wording of his motion? Mr. Belbin.
Before I do that, I think the Board of Selectmen here will determine who defines what the conflict is, okay? The second one about bringing back, that it's bringing back politics in the sense, it's really not. If we want to limit it to what's in our policies, our town policies, to determine a conflict within our town policies, that's a possibility too. Because our policies that are in our website, it says, this is what you have to follow here, all right? And if you don't comply with this, okay, and if the town administrator chooses not to follow our policies and procedures within our own guidelines that we created and we approved, okay, then we should have an out to say, well, if you're not gonna do it, then we should be able to do it.
Okay. Is there anyone that would write the wording we read?
I would.
All right. During the term of office, the town administrator, the select board will be the sole governing authority if a conflict, any issue that shows potential appearance of conflict, those are in parentheses, arises related to the duties of the town administrator. The select board shall have all powers to investigate any allegation of misconduct involving employees, elected officials, and appointed officials. The select board shall have the final decision on any issue of discipline, demotion, removal, termination of employees and appointed officials when a conflict arises between the employees and appointed officials and the town administrator. So, all right, it limits just to those entities. And then elected officials cannot be disciplined, demoted, or removed by the select board.
And Mr. Belbin, where would you add that in the?
That would be a separate entity on the bottom of the end of it.
So it would be added as 4.2.3?
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, to Mr. Hoffman's point, that phrase, that words that you just read actually renders the town administrator's position weak. So at the moment, we have a strong town administrator position as defined by our bylaw. And what that would do is strip the town administrator of that authority, just so everyone knows.
Can I make one?
Yes, but I would like to move this along.
And I understand that. So we'll just say, for instance, and this did not happen here. I'm just letting you know, okay? The town administrator has something happen with another employee, okay? That employee, all right, now turns around and lo and behold, they get disciplined here, okay? Well, then something comes up and says, well, guess what? The discipline here that was given, management is treated differently. All right, say it's sexual harassment or something like that. I mean, who knows? But how do we turn around, and if we can only discipline the town administrator here, but if he has a complaint against him, which it didn't happen, just saying it didn't happen, all right, but if there was a complaint against him for that, then how do we turn around and how do we discipline if he doesn't want to discipline somebody? All right, and they should be, because we have a policy that says in here, that says you're supposed to follow this policy in here, and you're not following it. You didn't follow it, all right?
Then we would probably consult our town council.
I think we need to move this along.
Yeah.
My only one thought on this, but I haven't had a comment on this, is if the board felt something like this was necessary, and I don't know if they think they do, but I would be uncomfortable about adding something like this or including wording until we had a meeting with town council, because I think this is, I think it's something we would need their guidance on. But no, is there a motion to add that to the town administrator bylaw?
Can I make a motion that we hold off, since we're holding off on voting on 3334, can we hold off on that, and between now and the next meeting, can we send his wording to town council just for their input on the legality and placement of it, if it would go here or there?
Mr. Fennessy, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, we can send it to him, you know, I don't think he'll approve it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it limits the authority of the town administrator, and the town administrator needs that authority. I think if you have a problem, Bob, or anybody else, you deal with the town administrator.
Right.
You know, you suspend or you do something to the town administrator.
I think I'd like to vote on it. I mean, personally, I think I'd like to vote on it. But I'll entertain a motion. Would the board like to make a motion that we send this wording to town council? Is there anyone?
I'll make a motion to send it to town council. I mean,
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Like I'm very honest, when I know or I don't know something, I don't know how we would handle this, so I would appreciate legal input.
All in favor of sending this to town council?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, I just don't even think so. So, all right, is there any?
4 to 1?
4 to 1.
No, we'll make it 4 to 2.
Make it 3 to 2.
I mean, 3 to 2, sorry, right? Because
Okay, unless I missed some other bylaw change. Okay, is there anything else to the town administrator bylaw? I think we've finished this, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so the next item is the yard sale bylaw.
So my only thing with that is the yard sale and the burglar is we just remove it from our bylaws.
Okay, so we discussed this quickly at the last meeting. Did everyone have a chance to read these bylaws? Is that a yes?
I actually have not had that chance, but.
Well, I did read them, and I understand Mr. Belbin's thoughts, but there are some, you probably should read the bylaws.
Okay.
So I hesitate to table too many things to our next meeting, but I think if you haven't read the bylaws before we can vote on whether we remove them or not, you need to read them.
Do you know, I have the bylaws in front of me. Does anyone know which one it is? I could read them out loud. Yard sale. Do you know which bylaw the yard sale or the burglar alarm is?
I'll have to look at Mark. They're toward the,
Ms. Hewens, would you like time to read the bylaws and think about it a little bit, or would you?
I would.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Why don't we table these to the next meeting? Any issue with that, Mr. Belbin?
no, it's good.
Okay.
And is it the same for the burglar alarm bylaw?
Yes,
Yeah.
both of those.
Thank you.
So let's see, Article 28, the Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse Disposal District Agreement. We voted to put this on the warrant. We did not vote to recommend. Is there a motion to recommend?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Anybody have any questions about this agreement?
I don't think so. Anyone? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Belbin.
we will have our executive director and our council available for a town meeting, so
Great, thank you.
Anybody has any specific questions?
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous.
Good job on that, Bob.
Good job on all my members. We all did it as a team.
Let's see. Mr. Fennessy, are there any more articles here?
I think the rest is zoning. Zoning.
Not seeing any. There's a lot of zoning articles.
Yeah.
I don't think there are, unless somebody sees one that I missed, which is certainly possible.
Earth removal,
Which number is that?
Article 33.
30.
It's a zoning too.
That's zoning
I
too?
think that's
Okay.
zoning too, yeah.
Mhm.
The ones that are red
Mhm.
are zoning.
Okay.
Red.
I don't see any more.
I think that's it.
All right.
Do, Mr. Chairman, do we want to go through the petition articles at the end?
We have no, we,
Just-
they automatically go on to the warrant,
Yeah.
and we have no, we don't offer a, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fennessy, we don't recommend or not recommend, right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So, no, I don't think there's a,
All right.
they are what they are.
No, I know that. I know we can't change anything.
No,
but-
we can't,
But we've never recommended them either way in the past.
right. Okay. Nothing else, right? Nobody sees anything I missed? Or that we missed? Okay. Minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. So we had tentatively scheduled an additional meeting for February 22nd because we still have some things we haven't gone over here, and you know, I thought at the time we would need the meeting. I still think we need the meeting. The problem is, after discussions with Mr. Fennessy, I don't think we're going to have any additional information
No.
by that
that's
meeting. So things we weren't able to act upon tonight, I don't think we're going to be able to act upon on February 22nd. So at this point, I don't see a need to have that meeting. Do you see any need, Mr. Fennessy, to have that February 22nd
I
meeting?
don't, unless something comes up, you know.
All right,
you can always
so we'll-
schedule one.
We'll go on the assumption that our next meeting is March 1st. That will be our joint meeting with the Finance Committee. We have a lot left over, so we may try to do something similar with that meeting and start it earlier, depending on the availability of the Finance Committee. I'll have to speak with Mr. Germain. I know they have a number of meetings coming up. But if their board is available earlier as well, then perhaps we can start that earlier, and then we can go into our meeting afterward and finish up all the work we have to do. Any questions on that at all? All right. So let's see, select board notes. Ms. Bogart.
Okay, so kind of get back to talk the talk, walk the walk. My first one, we have talked about how to increase people's awareness and interest in boards and committees, but we haven't really done anything to change it. So I'd like to see us have an in-depth conversation of what we can do and will do to improve it, because we haven't. And I've actually had more than one person in the last month grill me about openings. What's open? What does that mean? What does that committee do? How often do they meet? Just all these questions. They say, I don't know where to get that information. Two people, completely different walks of life. So we've got to do something to make it easier or more well-known. So I would like us to have an in-depth conversation, not just a, yeah, we'll do it, you know, it's on the webpage. Because it's coming from residents now. It's not just my idea. Two people want to be involved, and I couldn't give them all of the information they wanted. And it wasn't on the town website. So I'd like to talk about that.
It wasn't so the openings of boards and committees weren't on the town website?
It goes beyond that. I've had people look and what does that committee do? But honestly,
The town website, as far as I know, describes what each board, committee, and commission does.
not in a way that everybody understands. And I didn't look at every committee, so I don't know if every committee has that, but not in a way that's easily found, at least. So there's got to be something or some things we can do to make that better, because it's come twice now. People want to be involved, and they're not sure exactly how or what it is they can be involved in. So we can do something about that. What, Bob?
Well, these really aren't discussion
Right.
items, but.
Okay.
And it just,
Okay, and then my number 2 was to have a discussion about the town's drug and alcohol policy. The last couple times we've had one-day licenses brought to us. I know Bob has raised concerns that I never really thought about, and maybe we want to just kind of simplify a process, not just the one-day license, but in the last year we've dealt with some stuff, and maybe we just want to have a, no alcohol permitted on town property, or some towns have basic things. Again, I'm not prepared to have that full discussion now. I think it's a discussion we should probably have.
okay. Just so you're aware, and Ms. Weston, if you could just make a note, we'll put these on a future agenda, but there may not be the next meeting or two, because we have an awful lot coming up for town meeting.
Yeah,
just
no,
so
I
you're
understand
aware
that,
of
but
that.
let's just not drop the ball. That's what are we gonna do about it? Especially the committee thing, because now people are coming to me. What does that committee do? They're not finding a real explanation. If I apply for that, what am I actually applying for? Does it match up with what I think it is and what I want to be involved in?
All right, thank you. Select Board Community Announcements. Mr. Hoffman.
Well said.
Ms. Ewens?
I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Bogart?
No?
Mr. Belvin?
I want to thank our DPW and all those wonderful Paul guys that came out and took care of our town. They did another great job being called out, and this storm lasted longer than I think anyone really expected to, and we got a little bit more snow than we expected to, but I think they did an excellent job. I want to thank them very much.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Kevin Forg and the Board of Health for putting together this whole plan to distribute these COVID test kits, because I think it was very important that we get these out to our citizens. I think they did a really good job getting them out to the parks, and listen, every single one of these saved some family $30. So I think it's important that we get these out as quickly as possible. So thank you to those folks. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.